Do you have ancestors from the Netherlands? Well, if so, you can learn how to research your ancestors. Howdy, I'm Andy Lee with Family History Fanatics, and today I'm talking with John Boeren, who is an expert in research in the Netherlands.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, Andy.
How are
Nice
you
to be
doing?
here.
Good. So tell us, what does somebody need to know when they're starting to research in the Netherlands to begin with?
I think there are three things that are very important if you start your research in the Netherlands. And the first thing I want to mention is know how we deal with names.
Okay.
Because if you are going to use a website, a database, and you have to fill in a name, you should know what we do or what we don't do in Dutch language. For example, in America, you have a lot of Dutch names that start with van de, like Vanderbilt.
Yes.
That van de part we never use when entering the name in the database.
Okay, so
if you start to look for your Vanderbilt family, then probably in the Netherlands, it's not starts with van de, but it starts with Bilt.
Oh, that's
So
because that is really important, because in almost all the records in the United States, we've mashed that all together
Absolutely.
into one name.
Yeah, and sometimes you see that in Belgian records they also do that. So if you have a name that starts with van de and it's all together, it may be a Belgian one, but it can also be a Dutch one, and then you have to look for the Bilt part and not for the van de part.
Okay.
And the van is very common in the Netherlands because it refers to a place. So a lot of family names are derived from a place, and that means that there are a lot of family names that start with van, van de, van der, van den, all kinds of, well, that's because of grammar, that sometimes it changes, but everything that starts with van refers to a place.
Now, do they also use patronymics in Netherlands?
Yes. When you go back in your research, you will see that during the period of civil records, you will have fixed family names, because when civil registration commenced in the Netherlands, that's in 1811 in the biggest part of the Netherlands, you also had to use a family name. So those who did not have a family name yet had to adopt one. Prior to that period, so prior to 1811, it is possible that your family did not have a family name yet, but used patronymics. And you see, for example, in the northern part of the Netherlands, it's quite common that people had to adopt a name in 1811 because they were only using patronymics by that time.
Okay, so going back to with the Vander, which means like a place.
Yeah.
Is it possible then that you could have ancestors that might have a last name or a surname of Bilt, Vanderbilt, but they also use some patronymics as part of that, so you might find it under two different names.
Yeah, especially in the period before 1811, when that family name was not really registered or recorded in entries, you can find them with both. So, and you can find them together. So you can find, for example, Jan, the son of Peter Vanderbilt, can be recorded as Jan Pieters Vanderbilt. So the patronymic name and the family name are together in one record. And for example, in my hometown, there was a period where people were using 3 patronymics. That means the father, the grandfather, and even the great-grandfather. So you could be Jan, when everybody in your family was named Jan.
Which is good for genealogy.
It's absolutely marvelous, because you get 4 generations in a row and you know who you are looking for. But
oh, there's always a but.
It's always a but. People who record names may have made a mistake. And you can imagine that if you're talking about your great-grandfather, that sometimes the one who's recording doesn't really know if it was Peter or Henry or John. So you have to be careful. If there are more patronymics, then maybe the grandfather or the great-grandfather could be wrong.
And it might be in some cases where they flop the grandfather and a great-grandfather.
Yeah, because
so you might have the right names, not in the right order.
It gives you a great indication for whom to look. Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So your first tip is names, and it's really different if you're not used to this kind of a system.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so what's your second tip for Netherlands genealogy?
Second tip is learn some keywords in Dutch, because a lot of people who start with Dutch research have no knowledge of the Dutch language. which is not really a problem if you are looking for civil records, because often those are pre-printed and they only fill in a name, so they are easy to read. But if you know a few of those keywords, then you know what type of record you are dealing with. So for example, know words like father, mother, son, daughter, birth, marriage, death. Those words that are very common in civil records can help you understand what am I looking at. And is this a birth record or is this a death record? Is this the father, the son? So you understand most of the record if you know these keywords.
And I've heard that Dutch is like the closest Germanic language to English, and so a lot of the words for an English speaker are probably pretty recognizable. Is that correct?
Sometimes yes, sometimes not. For example, I was just talking with someone who said, what's the Dutch word for name? Well, that's naam. And if you see it written N-A-M-E in English and N-A-A-M in Dutch, it's quite similar.
Right.
So you will get that one, for example. But there are also a lot of words that are completely different, so they're hard to understand. And I think the grammar makes it more difficult.
Okay.
Absolutely. But if you once have seen a couple of those civil records, you get the pattern, you know where to look for a name and a date, so that makes it a little bit easier to understand the records. Absolutely.
Now, for dating, do they use the same calendar, January, February, March, April, May,
Yes.
that we use in English?
Yeah, we changed calendars somewhere in some parts in the 16th century, other parts of the Netherlands in the 17th century. But nowadays we have normal names for days, months, especially the same as here in America, for example. The only thing that you have to be careful with is we always start with the day and then the month, and not the other way around.
Okay, so date's a good thing then to remember is day, then month, then year, which
then
most
year.
genealogists usually do
Yeah.
like that. But in America, we're used to seeing dates written as, like with just numbers, month, then day, then year.
Yeah, and where it is the 28th, you know that that must be a day.
Right.
But when it's 2, it can be a month or a day, and
Correct.
then you go wrong.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your third tip for Netherlands genealogy?
Yeah, third tip is a lot of people who start with Dutch research will start with American sites, for example, Ancestry, Family Search, which have a lot of Dutch records. Wonderful to start with, but keep in mind that there are so many Dutch websites that have more information, more records, more images of the original records. So don't focus only on Family Search or Ancestry. Take a look, for example, at wiewaswie.nl. It's a database with millions of records, with millions of images of the original ones, and it covers pretty the whole country. So that's a good place to start. For example, if you don't really know where someone came from, maybe you have an indication for a province or a place, then it's easier to look specifically for those records. If you don't have an indication, then go to wiewaswie, for example, just type in the name and see what comes up. And you will easily see this family name is common in that part of the country or in that part of the country, so then you know where to look for your family. There are others, like openarc.nl, also helps you a lot. But also keep in mind that there are a lot of databases and a lot of websites with valuable information on a local or regional level. So also try to prepare your research and know this is the structure of the country. And if I want to see records from that part, then I should see on a provincial level, on a local level, what websites are there, do they have a database, do they have images of the records, the original records, and then you will find really a lot, because I think in the Netherlands we are very lucky that we have so many records online, even the original records that are digitized, and it's just going on and on, so there is every month there is more and more to see.
So really quick, explain the political divisions. Like in the United States, we have the country, then we have the states and the counties, and then your cities. What is the political divisions in the Netherlands that people need to be worried about?
We have 3 levels. So we have the national level, for example, the National Archives. Then we have the provinces, and there are 12. And then we have the local. So that's local administration. Sometimes we call it a city, sometimes we call it a town. Altogether, it's a municipality. And that means that there are more places in a municipality and there's probably one main place that also gives the name to the municipality. But we don't have a fourth level. So we have 3 levels: local, provincial, and national. That also means that if you refer to a place, you use those 3 levels in your place name.
Okay. So how, as far as history, how long has the Netherlands basically been its own separate country that we could find records? How far back?
Well, those are actually 2 questions.
Okay, that's
First
2 questions.
question, how long does the Netherlands exist? We are a kingdom since 1815.
Okay.
Before that we were a republic, and before that we were part of the whole Habsburg Empire. And in 1568 we started a revolution against the Spanish that were ruling the Low Countries. So from 1568 on we became a republic. We had a stadtholder, which is more like he was a prime minister, I think. You can compare it with that. But that title and that job became hereditary. So it started to be like a dynasty. And the same family is now the royal family.
Okay.
So we were a republic when almost all the countries in Europe had a king. We were a republic. And nowadays all the countries are republics. Not all, but a lot. And we are a kingdom.
So you flopped.
That makes us very special. So you can go back with civil records till 1811, sorry. And then you can go back with church records till approximately 1600. It depends if you are looking in Catholic records or if you are looking in Protestant records. There is a difference, of course. But for example, Catholic records can go back to 1600, maybe even 1580, 1590. Before that, there are also records, but those are court records, land registration records, tax records. And those records also give a lot of information, but you will not find a specific date of birth or a date of death. You really need to be in a period with church books, civil records, if you really want that kind of information. But relationships, property, and all that kind of information, you can find even back to, I don't know, 1200, something like that.
All right.
If you're lucky and your family had property, because if they didn't own anything and they didn't have to pay that much taxes, then it's difficult to find them in those old records.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have family actually that came from the Netherlands back in the 1600s.
Yeah.
When they colonized New York, basically.
Yeah, the New Netherlands.
Yep, the New Netherlands. And it's interesting because one of those ancestors was, I'm trying to remember the name, Adrian Bratt. B-R-A-D-T or B-R-A-T-T.
Okay.
But he was also called the Norman because he was really from Norway.
Okay.
And so that was one family line that it's like, okay, so he touched on the Netherlands. But the other family line is the Quick family line. Quick. And what I found out about the Quick family line is they'd been in the Netherlands actually probably since the 1500s or the early 1600s. They'd originally come from England, and most likely that surname was, brought by one of the English soldiers who decided to stay in the Netherlands, because Quick wasn't a Dutch surname, what I learned. And so there's lots of different spellings of Quick, because I guess they didn't have that sound in their language to be able to really transliterate it right.
And you see, of course, the same with the Dutch family names that came to the United States,
right,
that were also completely written in a different way because someone hears and thinks, okay, it sounds like that, so I write it like this.
Yes.
And it can be completely different than the original Dutch one.
And that's what I found in my research into the New York ancestors, because the Dutch ruled that area from when they settled in the early 1600s all the way to like 1668.
Yep.
And then the English took over, and it was pretty much all the Dutch colonists said they were businessmen for the most part. They wanted to make money, and if the English were going to let them make money, it was pretty much a bloodless coup that the English got to take over with it.
Yeah.
And so at that time period, you see a lot of those surnames changing just slightly or here or there, or just becoming completely anglicized.
Yeah.
From whatever the Dutch originally was.
And it even happened afterwards as well, because it was, but that's with, I think, all the languages that are not English. Someone who registers a name hears something and writes it down the way he thinks is correct.
Yeah.
And it can be completely different.
And you see that in court records and in land records.
But you even see that in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Because in the Netherlands you had the same idea. Someone was writing down a name, he heard something and he wrote it the way he thought it was okay. That means that sometimes the same person with the same family name in several records has a name that is just written a little bit different. It might be DT or T. It might be with an N in the end or without the N. It's just what do I hear and what do I write. So you see, even in the Netherlands, it's not that much a difference, like when you really have to translate into English or another language. But you, even in the Dutch records, you see that names are written differently because someone thinks this is the correct way to do it. So you have to take care of that as well, that you understand what way a name can be written, so that you don't forget to look for that name as well.
All right. Those are excellent tips for anybody who's looking to get into research into the Netherlands and into those Dutch records. Now, John, where can people find you online if they want to ask you some more questions or if they need some more help?
Yeah, well, I have a website, of course. My company is named Antecedentia. That's quite difficult.
We're going to put a link in the description below, so you don't have to try to remember that.
What I want to say about it is it's actually two words. It's antecedents, and it's scientia, the Latin word for knowledge.
Okay.
So if you want to know more about your ancestors, then those two words together, that's the name of my company.
Excellent.
And I'm based in the south of the Netherlands, right between Amsterdam and Brussels. So that's a great place to be. People can find me on Facebook, people can find me on Twitter, and my own website, of course.
All right. So we're going to put links to his website in the description below. And if you have any questions, put it in the comments below, and we'll make sure that John sees those questions and you can get in touch with him.
Yep.
If you would like to subscribe to this video, we'll be able to let you know about any upcoming content, and be sure to give it a thumbs up if you liked it.